Hey everybody, Vilisink coming at you again with Raid Shadow Legends, and in this one, with some inspiration, we are going to be looking at a faction that soon will be in Faction Wars. This faction came out not too long ago, it has some very good champions, so what we're going to do is, we're going to discuss the, okay, wrong one, I'm so used to going to the champions, we have to go to the index. We are going to look in Shadowkin, and because the faction is coming up, we can take a look and decide if any of these champions are actually any good. So, as always, we are going to start with legendary champions, and we have Toro, who has been widely covered as a massive damage dealer. Attacks an enemy, grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy, very possible it can do. Great A1, steals 100% of the turn meter, also decreases the cooldown of Oni's rays by 1 turn if the target is immune to turn meter reduction. So, as clan boss, attacks one enemy, places a decreased defense debuff and a weaken debuff for 2 turns. That will be clutch. To have somebody doing so much damage, also putting up decreased defense and weaken, it's a single enemy, but it's still going to be on the boss or something on the wave, so you will get some use from it. He also attacks 5 times instead of 1 on every 4th use of this skill. There's plenty of videos out there he's doing 100, 200k damage per hit. Vigorous. All turn meter fill effects are increased by 50% when used on this champion, which helps him go a lot quicker than he normally does, and he has an ally attack aura in all battles by 29%. So Toro, for this upcoming faction, he gives you damage, he will give you your decreased defense, he will give you your weaken. If he kills somebody, he'll get an extra turn. He's just overall a very strong champion. Next up, you have somebody that Mighty has built himself, and she is utterly just badass. Lady Kimmy. Lady's touching the A1. Attacks an enemy, then attacks the enemy with the highest turn meter. Will attack the same enemy twice if the initial target also has the highest turn meter. The second hit has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 15%, so there's a lot to take in, but she'll attack someone. She will then attack somebody with the highest turn meter, but if the person she attacks has the highest turn meter, she attacks them twice, with the chance of decreasing turn meter, so I know, it's a lot. So we have Flurry of Petals, AoE, decrease accuracy, decrease speed. This is a really cool pair of things to have. When you're going into the faction wars, you will potentially be going up with people that have some speed, people that have some accuracy. If you can break it, decrease accuracy is a respectively new debuff. Decrease speed, been around for a while. If you can apply that, it will pay back in dividends. Also has a 75% chance, it will go to 100% chance of decreasing each target's turn meter by 15%. So she's applying debuffs, giving you turn meter reduction. She removes one random buff from each enemy, then has 100% chance of placing block buffs for 2 turns on enemies if you have buffs removed. So anybody puts up any type of buff, it gets stripped, they then get block buffs. They then can't buff up probably for the rest of the fight because Lady Kimmy single-handedly can lock people out. Also fills the turn meters of all allies with 15% and places a 50% increased attack buff and an increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Increased accuracy, increased speed, the same as Claude. It's a very strong pair of buffs to put on, especially when you're putting on the enemy. When you put on decreased accuracy and decreased speed to them. If you throw in all the turn meter manipulation and so forth, it is really ridiculous. And Doom Tower, on a separate note, she has a great aura, so will increase your speed by 30%. So, first 2 champions, strong, really nice. Ninja's been covered a million times, decreased defense on the A1, HP burn, perfect veil on the A2, attacks all enemies, freeze on the A3, and it lands a lot of times, even though it's not booked. He's great for damage. Each time his power escalates each time a single enemy is hit by all three of Ninja's active skills in a single round. Now applies bosses, he does even more damage there. Ninja will absolutely be in your faction wars team. You'll see the drunkard. You'll see he's got a stun on the A1 single enemy, so there's still going to be use for it. Attacks 2 times at random. 100% chance decrease accuracy at a HP burn debuff for 2 turns. It's quite interesting. I have this champion. I think he's at 50. I need to get him built. I do want to mess around more with the Shadowkin. HP burn, decrease accuracy. It is a very interesting pair of debuffs to put on someone. Battle toast, increase attack and increase accuracy on all allies for 2 turns. Also, chance of placing true fear debuff on all enemies for a turn. 75% chance instead on enemies under increased attack buffs. So we'll just look at the increased attack and decreased accuracy. Again, we have another champion, increased accuracy, while at the same time putting up decreased accuracy. This is at random. This is the A3 is on all allies. So it buffs their attack, buffs their accuracy that you will need for faction wars. And if you do use your increased accuracy, sort of 50%, you can then relax on your builds. You don't have to be 300, 350 accuracy and so forth. You can relax on that stat, use that buff and therefore focus on your speed, your survivability, maybe your attack, whatever else that champion needs. Nobel is a champion that people really don't like, and I don't know, he's like, it reminds me of an old Hermit Yorg. 5% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by a turn, and that's 50%. If the target is under a Fear or True Fear debuff, there's a 65% chance of decreasing the duration of all targets' buffs by 1 turn instead. So if he's decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs, that's pretty cool. If they're under a Fear or True Fear debuff, you will then have a 75% chance, when booked, of decreasing the duration of all of the target's buffs. I mean, it's not the worst A1. It will reduce shields by a turn. It will reduce increased speed, increased attack. The common kind of ones you're going to see, shield, counter attack, whatever it is. Harbinger or Harbinger. Single enemy attack will ignore 30% of the target's defense. Fills this champion's turn meter by 25% after the attack. So he attacks. His base attack is not that bad. So he attacks, ignores defense, and gets a turn meter boost. If the target is under a Fear or True Fear debuff, decreases the cooldown of the dismiss skill by a turn. So it's a bit situational. I think this is one of the reasons why people really don't like him, because there's got to be Fear, True Fear before most of his kit really works. Attacks with enemies, 100% chance of decreasing each enemy's turn rate by 20%. So you need to have Fear or True Fear debuffs up to really have this champion shining. So you need to set him up, and I think that potentially it could be too situational. Whenever an enemy's turn rate is fully depleted by any champion, 50% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on. I mean, so reading that, you could potentially use this champion with Lady Kimmy, because she's all about turn meter depletion, removing it, slowing them down, chopping it bit by bit. Nobel could have a bit of, like, you could work well in a team with Kimmy if she's reducing turn meter. Apart from that, I'm just not a huge fan. Don't know if you would actually use him. If you had nobody else, you maybe would. Genzin. That's an enemy 3 times. Each hit forces the champion's turn meter by 6%. So a turn meter boost in the A1. AOB decreased defense for 2 turns. Each crit hit fills the champion's turn meter by 10%. So AOB decreased defense, quite nice. He also gets a turn meter boost. There's That's what you need for Faction Wars. AoE, decreased defense. Fated Vengeance, attacks one enemy will ignore unkillable buffs and shield buffs. Velocity's turn rate by 30%. It goes up by 60% instead if the target has 50% HP or less after the attack. Also decreases the duration of the Steel Parting and Fated Vengeance skills by 1 turn if it kills an enemy. So a lot going on. You can ignore unkillable, ignore shields, gets a turn meter boost, gets a bigger boost if they've got less HP. If he kills somebody, he lowers his cooldowns. So to be fair, Genjin is somebody that you will use in your Faction Wars team. Decreased defense, damage, multiple hits on enemies, increases the champion's speed by 10 and res by 50 if the number of champions on this champion's team is equal or to or lower than the number of enemies on the enemy team. So 5 enemies on yours, 5 enemies on Faction Wars team. A nice little boost for you there. The fashion's looking pretty good so far. Santoro's strong, Lady Kimi strong, Ninja strong, Yoshi's good. Nobel, a bit of a letdown. Genjin, decent. Kyoku, I mean, she could probably take up a whole video just for herself. She is an absolute tank. I do not know a massive amount. There is videos on her. I haven't pulled her. I would love her. Attacks an enemy. Plays 3 hits if the target is under 3 or more debuffs. 40% chance of placing a weaken debuff for 2 turns. Weaken on the A1 is always good. AoE decrease attack for 2 turns. Take less damage. Stay alive longer. After attacking, 80% chance goes to 100 of placing a HP burn debuff for 2 turns on all enemies that this skill did not place a decreased attack buff on. I mean, it's okay, but if you're placing decreased attack, you're going to land it on everybody. So the HP burn, I mean, you're going to land it on some people, but you won't really be able to. I mean, if you both have no accuracy, then yes, you could use it as a HP burn champion, I would think. Kyoku's hard, ally protection on all allies, block damage on this champion for 3 turns. That's an extra turn. So it's just an absolute ridiculous tank of a champion. With Wellspring, every time this champion is hit with a critical hit, heals all allies by 15% of their max HP. Then places a increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. So, weaken on the A1, decrease attack on the A2 or a HP burn, ally protection for 2 turns, block damage 3 turns, gets an extra turn every time she is hit with a crit hit. She heals everybody, they get increased defense for 2 turns. She increases their defense and all bots by 30%. I mean, watch videos on Kyoku. You could spend an hour talking about her. Kyoku as a legendary, if you have her, will essentially be basically just the one support champion you need. She'll give you support, she'll give you heals, she'll give you buffs. So just give you whatever you need. Gamuran, I was looking at him not that long ago. So block active skills, debuff for 1 turn. Maybe be okay. AoE, chance of stealing 1 random buff from each enemy and then spreads it on the team, which is quite cool. Can attack dead or living enemies. There's a lot to go through here. If the target is dead, you can't revive them because the block revive goes on. It attacks all enemies. Each enemy will receive damage equal to 20% of the target's enemy max HP. If it's a boss's minion, damage is equal to 20% of that champion's max HP. Attack can't be critical, but it does ignore shield buffs and all of their defense. If the target is alive, they get True Feared for 2 turns. He will then heal all allies by 20% of the target's enemy max HP. If the target is a boss or a boss's minion, the healing is equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. The True Fear debuff cannot be resisted. It's basically just locking people out. If they're dead, they're staying dead. and if they're alive or getting true fear, they ain't doing nothing. So it's a complete immobilization of your enemies. And you device one random ally with 30% HP, 30% turn meter each time an enemy is killed. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. Gamuran is actually a really decent champion. The A1 isn't that great. The A2 is pretty decent. The A3 is pretty strong. So overall, Kyoku, Gamuran, they could be a really, really good pairing. And again, we have Rio Bone Spear. Mighty has her in his clan boss team. I think he just put in Draco and took her out. She's a badass. Continuous shield buffs on the A1 for one turn. Also places a small continuous shield buff on allies with 30% HP or less for a turn. Places a stun debuff on a target enemy for one turn, as well as a HP burn debuff, decreased defense, weaken, decreased attack, decreased crit rate, then attacks the target. It's a lot of buffs. All the buffs under the sun she puts up. So there's a cleanse, you then get block buffs, similar to Scattered Shaman. She then heals everybody by 35% of their max HP and a further 5% for each debuff removed from them. So if you're heavily debuffed, you could get up to 50-60% of your HP back. It's just so strong. Reflect when receiving any debuffs, instantly transfers them from this champion to the attacker, which is an inbuilt deflection set. Increases ally attack and faction crits by 42%. With how hard Rio actually hits, that aura is pretty fantastic. So a lot of people won't have legendaries, but a lot of the legendaries like you will use when Faction Wars opens. Maybe Nobel. If you have Kimi, you can if you've got Nobel, you can maybe use them. But Rio's there for your debuffs. Gamuran can be there, kind of like a lady that keeps him dead, or if they're alive, fears him. Kyoku's going to be your tank, going to heal you, give you buffs, give you increased defense, ally protection. Genshin, damage. Yoshi is a debuffer. Ninja, damage. Jintaro, damage. Lady Kimi just locks people down. So as far as the faction that's opening really soon, every legendary is pretty much usable. You could, you're not going to have them all, but the majority of these will absolutely be useful for your Faction Wars team. So that's it for this video. We'll run through the epics at a later date. But until then, guys, stay safe, keep on reading. If you are close to getting Lydia, or if you're going to be doing the if you're going to be using Shadowkin, check out the vid. Might give you some ideas. Stay reading, stay safe. See you next time.